Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Additionally, there's a special Black Friday promo code for Magic Singles. From November 22nd to November 26th, you can use the promo code HEROESBF to get 15% off Magic Singles. During that time, there will also be site-wide discounts on sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, sealed product, and much more. See the description below for more details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 5 of our 6-part Ultimate Masters full set review. Today we're going to look at all of the green cards as well as the rest of the multicolor cards in the set. If you've been watching this series, you kind of know what to expect here. We're going to look at each card individually and discuss how they're best utilized in the limited formats, draft, and sealed. These are all reprints, so we know what they do in the environments where they are illegal, so this is truly a limited set review. Quickly before we get started, just a fast reminder, if you're looking for a way to support us, check out the description below. Our Patreon page is down there. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon, including Ultimate Masters. And finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code. And today's the last day of this special 15% off singles promo code. Check out the description for all those details. But as always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. I appreciate each and every one of you. And let's get into it. Basking Rootwalla is our first card of the day. Really awesome one drop here. There's not a lot of low curve strong creatures necessarily in the set generally, so when you see one, you got to pay attention to it. I'm not a big fan of 1/1s for 1, but this is a nice ability. You can only use it once per turn, but a green and 1 will pump this +2/+2. That's pretty significant. Early on when you drop this card, it just makes combat very difficult for your opponents if you have some mana up. They have to assume a lot of the time that this is going to be an early drop 3/3, and that can throw off their math quite a bit and really slow them down. This also has madness for 0, which is kind of nice if you have a discard outlet. It's just all value. I want to drop this if I don't have a lot of discard outlets. It's still a very, very solid one drop generally. If you have some, and you'll find them more frequently in the Golgari color combination, or maybe a little bit in Simic with blue having some discard outlets, then in that case, wonderful added value. But if not, it's still very good. Become Immense. I've been saying all week they've done a great job at creating a set with cards that fit into multiple archetypes, and this is another one of those cards. When I see this and it has Delve, I automatically go to Golgari in my mind because they're going to populate the graveyard relatively efficiently and they care the most about what's actually in the graveyard. Aside from that, I'm also thinking a little bit of Simic because there's a lot of self-mill that goes on in blue. Now, when I look at the ability, I get pulled towards Gruul because the +6/+6 might matter the most in that color combination. They're the stompy colors. They're going to have trample and such. They also have some light ramp, so if I'm not all in on the Delve plan, I still could cast this a little bit sooner than normal. Overall, another card that could fit into a number of different places. Boar Umbra. With Totem Armor, I love this aura. Fantastic ability. Gives a creature +3/+3. Gruul might like this because they have a lot of trample creatures. You want to push across damage. Maybe you ramp a little bit into a creature, then play this. Aside from that, red also has other heroic creatures, as does green. But where I really like this card is Selesnya because they also have heroic creatures, and I feel like they have a tighter aura strategy generally. Another way you could go is actually Simic. Now, at the end of the video, we're going to see a couple hybrid cards that play into a Simic hexproof strategy. Most of the time, honestly, I would probably just treat those as green cards and play them in a Selesnya build, but there is an option for a Simic build depending on how your pool goes. You could have some hexproof creatures. Not only are we going to look at one later that's a hybrid, but there is a blue hexproof creature we saw the other day, and there's 3 auras in blue, so it's not like there's no auras there. Combine that with what you have in green, could have a build there. Might not come together as often as the Selesnya one, but it could come together. Boneyard Worm. I like Golgari for this one because Dredge is in both of those colors. If you can populate your graveyard quickly, get some creatures in there, this thing can be very powerful very fast considering it's just a 2-drop. I would also consider Simic because of blue self-mill. I think those are the 2 color combinations where this will really shine. Brawn. Okay, this has trample and it's a 3/3 for 4. That's okay, those are decent stats. But if you get this in the graveyard and you control a forest, then all your creatures get trample, which feels very Gruul to me, right? Gruul's going to be able to push across their damage. Maybe they have some large creatures that don't have trample. This is going to really help them maybe close out a game. But it's going to be a little bit harder to get this in the graveyard, I think, in the Gruul colors than it would be in other combinations, perhaps Golgari or Simic, for example. So I do think it could be good in various builds, depending on your pool. Simic might be the shakier of the 3 because they might have less creatures generally, but it just depends on what you actually have to build with. Crushing Canopy, good card out of the sideboard. It costs 3, instant speed, gives you flexibility. Now, I'm not going to main deck this most of the time because I think this set is so powerful. I just want to be offensive in game 1. But if I'm having trouble with a problematic flyer or an enchantment, I'll definitely sideboard this in. Devoted Druid, awesome mana dork here. Play it if you're in green. I don't care what color combination. You could argue it's maybe a little bit better in Gruul. They're going to appreciate the light ramp more because they're trying to build into larger spells, larger creatures. But regardless, you're going to play this and it's going to be awesome for you. The -1/-1 counter that goes on it, and we also have seen persist creatures this week too. There are ways in the set to get rid of that counter, so keep that in mind. Remember, +1/+1 counters actually cancel out -1/-1 counters. They don't both just sit there. That is an obscure rule, but it is important to know in this limited environment. Eternal Witness. Alright, this is a really strong uncommon. 2/1 for 3, those are actually decent stats in this limited environment. Maybe not great in a current standard set or anything like that. But in this set, a 2/1 for 3 is actually pretty good. Other than that, though, taking a card, and can be any card out of your graveyard back to your hand, is going to be really, really strong in this set. Simic's going to appreciate this. Again, with all the mill going on, you might mill a card that actually matters to you, and it's almost like a tutor in some ways there for at least a portion of your deck. Golgari will really appreciate this card as well because they're going to be going deeper into the graveyard too with Dredge. The only bad thing I can think to say about this card is, well, it's double green, makes it a little harder to splash. It's just really awesome, though, no matter what color combination you're in. Fauna Shaman. Alright, this card is awesome. It's a rare, you're not going to see it all the time, and it's a 2/2 for 2. There's not a lot of those in the set, so you got to pay attention when you see them. Great curve filler, but it does so much more. Green, tap, discard a creature. Awesome discard outlet first and foremost. If I have a Madness creature, and we've seen them in green, we've seen them in red, we've seen them in black, fantastic way to enable that. If I have a reanimation plan going on and my reanimation creature is in my hands, I can dump it in the graveyard. That's going to come into play, especially with Selesnya builds and Golgari builds. We know green cares about creatures in the graveyard. We've already seen cards today that care, and there's more coming. So just that alone is pretty good. But then, this is also a tutor for you. You're tutoring up the creature that you want by discarding another one, and that can just be good in a vacuum. Card's fantastic here. Fecundity. This is an interesting one. Cost 3, does nothing on its own, and your opponent might find advantage here. Whenever a creature dies, that creature's controller may draw a card, so it is reciprocal. Now that's awkward. I might play this out of the main, though, in those Golgari decks that are going to be sacrificing a number of creatures for benefit at times. Red has a little bit of that too, so if I have that going on in my deck, maybe I'm actually in Rakdos and I'm just splashing this in, then this could be very good for me, because I'm going to get more advantage, hopefully, than my opponent will. But if I'm not all in on that type of plan, I'm probably going to leave this in the sideboard, see what my opponent's doing. If I feel like it's an advantage to have this in play for game 2 or game 3, maybe I'll bring it in. But I do think you really want this when you're sacrificing creatures, just to make it more consistent. Golgari Brown Scale. This one has Dredge, so this is going to be awesome to help you populate your graveyard. The going back to your hand and gaining 2 life, that's kind of interesting to me, but it's not necessarily what makes me want to play this. However, if I do that a couple times over the course of the game, 4 or 6 life, that actually becomes significant. It's also 2/3 for 3, which is great stats in this set, and it's a common, so you'll be able to find these in a draft. The Dredge ability can make that a persistent and annoying creature in the set. Dredge is going to be best in Golgari colors, where the graveyard definitely matters, and populating it quickly will help when you have delve spells and such. And secondly, Simic, if you have a payoff for your milling, and that could be maybe Laboratory Maniac or something like that, it's going to work really well there too. Golgari Grave Troll. Here's another rare for you, and this is going to work well again in the Golgari or Simic strategies where you're trying to mill a lot, because this one's a Dredge 6. Here's another payoff for getting creatures into your graveyard. It doesn't have Trample or Evasion, which is a little annoying, but Gruul might also be interested in this. In this set, a large creature could go a long way, especially a persistent one like this with Dredge and Regeneration. It just makes it hard to deal with. Groundskeeper. This is coming to Pauper for the first time. Interesting 1-drop here. Not always going to play this one, but if I'm getting greedy with colors, maybe I'm getting deeper into a 3rd color, 4 colors, maybe even 5 colors, this becomes more appealing if I'm milling myself or discarding lands, because that way I could recur those lands for color fixing purposes. This is only basic lands, so you can't do anything real fancy with it, but if you care about your color consistency, this might be worth running. Also, some Gruul decks might like this to try to ensure consistent land drops. Hero of Lena Tower. This is pretty good in Selesnya first and foremost, because you could throw an aura on this, and even if you don't have that much extra mana, giving this 1 or 2 +1/+1 counters feels like it could be relatively economical to me. It is a little fragile coming in, so you don't want to just play this on turn 1 and let it sit there and die, but maybe you bring it in a little bit later in the game when you can follow it up quickly with an aura. And like I said earlier, perhaps Simic could be an option here too. Now, aside from that, I might be interested in Gruul as well. They do have some heroic going on, and they also have more mana, most likely, to spend on this. So it could get a lot bigger there. And like I said earlier, a large creature could go a long way in this set, even if it doesn't have evasion. Hooting Mandrills, great Delve card. I might lean towards Golgari here because of the Delve, or Simic because of the Delve, or maybe Gruul because of the Trample. But regardless, this is a solid creature no matter what your build is. Kodama's Reach, a little bit of ramp, a little bit of mana consistency. This is also an arcane spell, so take note of that. It doesn't come into play all that often, but there is a little bit of splice onto arcane in the set. But you're going to play this either if you want to ramp a little in those Gruul colors especially, or you want to fix colors. This is a great way to fix colors. Searching your library for up to 2 basic lands, if you're going maybe 3 colors, 4 colors, 5 colors, this will be great for you. Life from the Loam, it's a rare. It gives you Dredge. That's the main reason you're probably going to play it, though, if you care about Dredge. So again, you're trying to mill yourself in those Golgari or Simic strategies especially. Other than that, if you're getting a little greedy on colors, it could get better for you there too. Also, this will get back any land, not just basic lands, so it does combo well with things like Terramorphic Expanse, which we'll see tomorrow. Miming Slime. This is also new to Pauper. Now, in Limited, you might say Gruul would appreciate this because they will have the larger creatures, and you'd be right. You don't want to play this if you're running a bunch of 2/1s or something like that. But if you have big creatures or creatures that can get big, this is worth running, I think, just maybe as a 1-of. You don't want to go overboard with this in case you start drawing into these and not your creatures. But a 1 is just fine. Now, the token doesn't have Trample or Evasion, but there's plenty of ways to give Trample or Evasion within this set. And I've been saying all day, you know what? Sometimes in this set, it's not going to matter. A large creature is going to go further here than in most standard sets, as a matter of fact. Just because in the environment, there's a lot of smaller creatures. Noble Hierarch, it's rare, but if you open it, congratulations, because this is an amazing mana dork. I heard it's worth a few dollars too, but more importantly in Limited, it's an amazing mana dork. 3 colors to choose from. I get it, one of them's not red, and Gruul is the color that really wants to ramp, but when you're paying 1 mana for a mana dork, it just doesn't matter. The 3 colors gives you extra flexibility, but even if it was just green, you'd be happy with it. If you're playing a green deck, play this. The card's going to be incredible for you. Exalted is interesting too. Now, Exalted isn't a huge theme in this set, but there's a little bit of it going on in white, and it will play well with the other cards if you get lucky enough to get one of them. Exalted is not playing a large role in the set, but it sure doesn't hurt. Nourishing Shoal, another rare here, you won't see it a lot. It is an arcane spell, so pay attention to that. Now, Gaining Life is a little more defensive generally, so I don't know if I'm going to main deck this. It's a little bit of a nombo too, considering you can pitch a card and play it for free, but the card gets exiled. It has to be a green card as well, which does make it a little more narrow. But yes, if Gaining Life is going to be important for you, and that could be out of the sideboard against a more aggressive build like a Boros deck or something like that, then this can do some work. You could argue this would be better in Gruul because you might have more mana to pour into it as well. And at some point, I mean, a huge life gain actually could just be good in the main deck. So some Gruul decks might consider main decking it. But for me, I want to be more offensive in this particular environment early on, so I'll just sideboard it in when I need it. Pattern of Rebirth, another rare here, 3rd in a row, so you won't see it a lot, but this is a powerful card. I like this in a reanimation strategy as another way to get the card into play. Because if it doesn't get to the graveyard for some reason, and it's lower into your deck, for example, maybe you have a really big target, then you can put this on a small creature. If that creature can die, then you're going to just be able to tutor it out of your deck and put it right into play. And that's amazing. Now, the trick is getting the creature to die. If you put this on like a 1/1 and attack your opponent, they're not going to block it, obviously. They're just going to take the 1 damage unless maybe they're at 1. So you're going to want a sack outlet, which means this might be best in Golgari. But like I said, just a backup for reanimation in a Selesnya deck could be good too. Generally, this is just going to be a solid card no matter what, as long as you have good targets to go and find. Now, if you mill yourself too aggressively, this card actually gets worse and worse as the game goes on, as targets start to go away. So keep that in mind. Some builds might actually shy away from this card just for that reason, but I think most will love it. Penumbra Worm. Okay, this might be best in Gruul, but it's a really solid creature just generally. I mean, this thing is a 6/6 with Trample, and when it dies, it gets replaced with another token that's a 6/6 with Trample. This time it's black. Really awesome card here. It's good no matter what your build is. It's not as splashable as other cards being 2 on green, but you know what? If you can cast this, you're going to play it and be really, really happy with it no matter what, even if you're not in Gruul. Prey Upon, great common removal here, and it's hard to say in a draft considering this is a common and how powerful the set is that I would always like first pick this or anything like that. but it is a high pick common in a draft for sure. This is green's removal, and yes, it's sorcery speed. Yes, it's a little high variance if you compare it to just a destroy spell, but you're only paying 1 for this, and hopefully if you're in green, you have enough creatures that it won't be that much of a consideration for you. Sure, in this set especially, it might be better in Gruul colors because they're going to have larger creatures, and some decks are going to have all small creatures, and that could get maybe a tad bit awkward at times, but for the most part, this will be very, very good. Pulsa Marasa. First thing I want to point out is the gain 6 life here. That's a big chunk of life. Like, that does make a difference. When I see cards that say gain 2 life or 3 life, like those are more sideboard cards for me against aggressive builds, this I would consider main decking. Now let's read the rest of the card. Return target creature or land card from graveyard to its owner's hand at instant speed. Okay, it doesn't just have to be you. You gain the life though, no matter what. But if I have a land in my graveyard that I need because of color reasons, and again, if I'm getting greedier in colors, this gets better. Note that this can grab a non-basic land too. Or just grabbing a creature. I have a really good creature in my graveyard that I need to cast now. Wonderful. I can go ahead and play it. Maybe it's a creature that had a good enters the battlefield effect, and I sacrificed it, now I can get it back, play it again. There's a lot of versatility here. What I really like, though, is if my opponent is going into their graveyard at instant speed, I can kind of put the brakes on that. If they are targeting a creature for reanimation, you can instead send it back to their hand. So that is kind of sweet on its own, and if I'm not main decking this for some reason, remember to bring it in if your opponent is dipping into the graveyard. Satyr Wayfinder. This is just a really solid card here at common. It's only a 1/1, but that's not why you're playing it. Enters the battlefield, you get to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You do reveal them, so your opponent sees them too, but you may put a land from among them into your hand, and then the rest go to the graveyard. So this does everything you want to do, basically, in this set. You're grabbing a land. It doesn't have to be a basic land, take note of that, but this could be good for Gruul. Make sure you hit your land drops a little more consistently, perhaps. You also get to repopulate your graveyard, which could be good for reanimation in Selesnya or Golgari. Golgari and Simic also have other graveyard strategies. This is another card that's great in a lot of different builds. Shed Weakness. Good combat trick here. Just 1 green, instant speed, and target creature will get +2/+2 till end of turn. You can also remove a -1/-1 counter, which effectively makes it +3/+3 in those circumstances. And maybe more importantly, it works really well with the Persist creatures or Devoted Druid that we saw earlier, just by giving them more life, and I think that's actually super sweet. So this card gets better if you have those cards in your deck. But honestly, if I'm not concerned about removing a -1/-1 counter, this might not make my cut in such a powerful set. Snake Umbra. Alright, another Umbra. I love the totem armor. You know that already. This gives a creature curiosity and +1/+1. That's also very, very solid. Again, perhaps best in Selesnya, just because you have the heroic or a theme going on there. But it could be good too in red, where you do have some heroic and aggressive creatures as well, or even Simic, where there are some creatures that could get by for damage a little easier with evasion and could lead to some more card draw. And remember, Hexproof can come into play as well in blue. Spider Spawning, one of my favorite first pickable build around draft cards here. This is amazing if you just go all in on this strategy, maybe grab a couple of these. If you remember in Innistrad Draft, this card was an all-star. And yeah, I know this is a more powerful format, but they also give you a lot more ways to populate the graveyard here, and I do think this is going to be powerful within Ultimate Masters as well. Green is all about trying to get those creatures in the graveyard. There's a lot of ways to do that. This is a huge payoff. Creating 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach based on how many creatures are in the graveyard is huge, and then you get to flash it back and do it all over again. You can have a huge army of little spiders. It just gets out of control. Where is this best? I like Golgari because I know the flashback cost is black. But even aside from that, you have just a lot of ways to populate the graveyard with the dredge cards, a lot of ways to sacrifice creatures for benefit to get them into the graveyard, and also you can sacrifice these tokens for benefit. Gruul might want to sack some tokens too, for that matter. And is it good in other places? Sure, it is. I mean, Simic's going to be milling a lot. However, blue doesn't have a whole bunch of creatures. I like Golgari better in that regard. And of course, the flashback cost is a consideration as well. I think you can really build a powerful draft deck around this card, though, regardless. Spider Umbra. Okay, maybe one of the least exciting Umbras, but it only costs 1, and it still has totem armor, so I'm still on board. +1/+1 in reach, that's okay, but if I'm targeting a heroic creature, which is in green, white, red, then yeah, I might get extra value out of this, and it is really cheap, so again, I could see myself playing it in those strategies. We're going to get to the card soon, but like I've been saying today, blue is also an option when it comes to some of these auras due to the hexproof. Staunch-Hearted Warrior. 2/2 for 4. I don't love that, but I love the heroic here. Whenever you cast a spell that targets this, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters. Hopefully you can target it sooner than later, considering it is a little fragile, but this will be awesome in the Selesnya build, could be okay in the Gruul build too. And like I've been saying with all these heroic cards, also Hexproof and Blue could sometimes come together as well. Stinger Fling Spider. This one's not all that exciting. This is more of a sideboard card for me if I know I'm dealing with flyers. It does destroy a flyer when it enters the battlefield, which is actually pretty sweet, and you get a 2/5 body for 5 and reach, so it is good against flyers, but it's not a very offensive card, and again, I kind of want to be offensive in game 1. I'll bring it in, though, if I need it for game 2 or 3. Tarmogoyf. Alright, here it is. It's mythic. What's funny here, though, is this card is actually very playable in this particular format. Look at all the different graveyard mechanics that have been going on. We've been talking about them all week. I won't list them all again for you, but this card plays into that whole strategy of getting things in your graveyard. The more variety of things in your graveyard, the better for Tarmogoyf. And also, if your opponent's doing anything to get stuff into their graveyard, which odds are they will, even if it's just playing Magic, that's going to go towards its power and toughness as well. That's phenomenal for a 2-drop in this set. And it's interesting because in other Master sets, when you open this card, you were kind of like, well, okay, congratulations, I just got a valuable Magic card that I might be able to play in Modern or Legacy. But this time, you can actually play it in Limited and be real happy with it. Travel Preparations. This isn't anything crazy, but putting a +1/+1 counter on a card that has a -1/-1 counter, like I said before, could be pretty interesting because it could keep a persist creature staying persistent. Also, this has a white flashback cost, which hint hint nudge nudge, means it's going to work really well with the heroic creatures. +1/+1 counter on up to 2 target creatures, so you could trigger heroic on 2 different creatures. That could come into play in Gruul, but you're going to really like this in Selesnya. Vegevine, another mythic, so again, you won't see a lot of it, but just a really solid creature. 4/3, haste for 4, that's just good on its own. If you ever can cast 2 creature spells in one turn, and there are a lot of low casting cost creature spells in this set just generally, so it's very possible probably in any of the color combinations as a matter of fact, then wonderful, this gets to come back from the graveyard directly to the battlefield. And again, if it ends up in your graveyard through milling or discarding, you get the opportunity perhaps to bring it back and even circumvent that casting cost of 2 green and 2. Verdant Eidolon, this is a 2/2 for 4. Again, when you look at those stats, not impressive, but it's not about the stats, it's about the ability here. Paying a green, sack it for 3 mana of any one color, so that can help you fix colors if you're getting a little greedier, that's always nice. And if Gruul wants to ramp a little bit, this is a good way to do that. That's where this card probably exceeds the most, but being able to ramp in any of these deck strategies will be good. Also, there's added value if you play this alongside multicolor spells, and you never know, if you have to discard this at some point or it gets milled, a multicolor spell could bring it back to your hand for you. Walker of the Grove. This is a good Gruul card because it's a big old creature, maybe you can ramp into it a little bit. 7/7, but you also have the evoke option here for green and 4. You can get a 4/4 elemental creature token. That's actually pretty decent too if you can't get up to the 8 mana you need for this. But beyond that, we talked in the past about how white has some ways to juggle the evoke cards, which could get kind of interesting there too. Overall, this is just a solid creature, and if you need something a little higher on the curve with some size behind it, this could be good in a number of builds. Wickerbough Elder. This has good stats actually for this set. A 3/3 for 4 is not bad, and you potentially can remove the -1/-1 counter, eventually making it a 4/4, so I do like that. And it can deal with a problematic artifact or enchantment, so if I'm not main decking it for some reason, I can bring it in those circumstances. Wild Hunger. Awesome in Gruul. Again, sure, the flashback cost is in red, so hint hint nudge nudge, but giving something a pump with trample is going to be critical in that color combination. Because you do have some big creatures that sometimes don't have trample. We just saw that 7/7 a moment ago. So this is going to help you push damage across in that combination. But again, it could be a very good combat trick in a number of other builds too if you're looking for a combat trick. Also, it's going to work good with heroic. So think about those green, red, or white creatures with heroic. Wild Mongrel. Maybe one of the best green discard outlets. Maybe one of the best ones in the set, as a matter of fact. Being able to discard a card just for free to give this +1/+1 and also it becomes a color of your choice till end of turn. That's pretty good. Oh, by the way, this is also a 2/2 for 2, and it's a common. This is going to be the perfect curve filler. Even if you don't have plans on discarding a lot of cards for some reason, you're still going to want to play this card. And beyond that, you can play this with Madness, which will be prevalent in Gruul, as well as Golgari. This will get those Golgari or Selesnya reanimation targets in the graveyard, or just simply populate the graveyard for cards like Spider Spawning, for example. The thing to remember, though, even the threat of a possible discard and pump makes this a difficult creature to deal with in combat, too. Woodfall Primus. Okay, it's rare. You're not going to see a ton of it, but this is a super solid creature. 6/6, trample, persist. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent. Wow, what do you expect to pay for this? Well, it's not cheap. 3 green and 5, so it's not very splashable. And it would be nice if you can ramp into it, so Gruul, I'm looking at you. But this is also an awesome reanimation target. Remember, reanimation doesn't even need to be able to cast the particular card to make use of it. You could play an Orzhov reanimation deck. This could just be a reanimation target out of that deck if you feel like you can consistently do that. So wonderful if you're playing Selesnya or Golgari reanimation, but even if you're not, this is still very playable sometimes. Also, keep your eyes open for cards that could improve persist. Okay, let's move on to Getik Teeg as we go into some Selesnya. Now, this is a 2/2 for 2, even though it is 2 different colors, but still, in this set, that is a consideration. Now, it shuts down big non-creature spells, anything that will cost 4 or greater or is an X spell. So you do want to consider that because it is reciprocal. So if you have big non-creature spells or X non-creature spells, it will affect you too. If you don't, though, or maybe you have some good sack outlets where you're confident that you can get rid of this if you need to, then you could main deck it. But I do think most of the time you just bring this out of the sideboard if you're having some trouble with large non-creature spells. Sigarda, Host of Herons. This one's a mythic, and okay, spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. Might be good against black because they have things like Chainer's Edict, but let's face it, this is just good. If you can cast it, flying hexproof 5/5, you're gonna play it, and it's also a good reanimation target, so maybe even if you can't cast it, you might still play it. This card could really like auras as well, considering it's hexproof, so it's in the right colors. Here's a hybrid card, so you get a little more flexibility with Kitchen Finks, and this is real solid. A 3/2 for 3 in this environment is actually good. It has persist on top of that, and we've talked about ways to exploit that a little bit. And beyond that, gaining 2 life and then later another 2 life is really solid too. 4 life starts to feel substantial enough to matter. If for some reason I'm not main decking this, though, it is a sideboard consideration against a more aggressive build like Boros. Safehold Elite, another persist card here, but more importantly, it's just a 2/2 for 2, and it's at common. Again, I've been mentioning how difficult it is sometimes to find 2/2s for 2. Bears with upside are out there, but you got to look for them a little bit, and you do want your curve to be real solid at the 2 and 3 spot, so you're going to need this just generally. The hybrid mana also gives you more flexibility, so you can play it in more builds, which is nice. Urban Evolution as we move on to Simic, and draw 3 cards, you had me right there. As a matter of fact, that's perfect for Simic because they're trying to move through their deck as quickly as possible. You know Blue's got a lot of card draw spells and mill, and maybe you could even win with Laboratory Maniac, that's cool. But aside from that, you can also play an additional land this turn. So perhaps you're actually playing a Gruul deck and splashing a little blue could help you ramp out a little bit. That could be interesting too. And notice it is not basic land, so that's kind of cool. Shielding Plaques. Now these last 2 cards are hybrid Simic cards and they are related to hexproof. This is an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Also, it replaces itself, which is kind of nice too. Now, do you actually want to build a Simic hexproof deck? Depending on your pool, you could. There's one hexproof creature that's in blue. We're going to see another hybrid one in just a second. There are 3 auras actually in blue, so there is support there to do that. However, I do think it's going to be better if you use this as basically a green card and think about what's going on in Selesnya. Selesnya auras are going to be more consistent. There's more things to choose from there. You have Heroic coming in to play a role as well. So I think just in general, that is going to be the better build, but it does depend on your pool. You could go the Simic direction too. Slippery Boggle. Okay, here's the other card I was alluding to, and yeah, it's going to be great if you can throw auras on this thing. It could work in Simic, but I do think it will be better in Selesnya auras. Okay, that does it for part 5. One more part to go. Tomorrow we're going to be back looking at the colorless cards. Those are going to be the colorless spells, the artifacts, the lands. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon and have a great day.